Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sarah Hoover, and I am Associate Dean for Innovation in the Arts and Health at the Peabody Institute, where I have served for 10 years alongside Dean Bronstein. So it gives me tremendous pleasure to help to be with you today for this event. So I'm excited to join you today to host and moderate the fourth installment of the Hopkins at Home Dean's Notebook series. This series spotlights the work, research, insights, and passion projects of those at the helm of Hopkins' 9 and soon to be 10 academic divisions. This afternoon's discussion, entitled Building on the Breakthrough, we'll go over how the Peabody Institute's new strategic plan will mark the next chapter in its remarkable journey of growth and innovation by focusing on 5 key areas: academic programming, financial aid, expanding our reach, people and culture, and the Mount Vernon campus. Presenting on this topic today will be Fred Bronstein, Dean of the Peabody Institute of the Johns Hopkins University. He is an accomplished pianist, dedicated music educator, and successful chief executive of American Symphony Orchestras, and he was appointed the first dean of the Peabody Institute of the Johns Hopkins University in 2014. Building on the Breakthrough, launched in fall 2024, is the third in a series of transformative strategic plans that have driven a remarkable period of growth and innovation during his tenure. Under his leadership, Peabody adopted a new curriculum that redefines the educational model for aspiring artists, preparing them for 21st century careers. The conservatory has established new academic programs in dance and music for new media, and this fall launches the first ever Bachelor of Music in Hip Hop, as an extension of its exponential growth in the areas of music engineering and technology. Dean Bronstein has led a dramatic increase in investments in financial aid, including meeting full need without loans for domestic undergrads, and has overseen record-setting growth in applications and enrollment. Under Dean Bronstein's leadership, Peabody has developed important programming and research at the intersection of the performing arts and health, and opened the Johns Hopkins Rehabilitation Network Clinic for Performing Artists. That's a mouthful. The first of its kind on a music school campus. Dean Bronstein has also been an advocate for equity and inclusion, and has been outspoken in his belief that attracting new and diverse audiences is necessary to ensure a future for the performing arts industry. Prior to joining Peabody, Dean Bronstein served as president of the St. Louis, Omaha, and Dallas Symphony Orchestras. As a performer, Bronstein toured for 8 years and could be heard on New World Records as part of Equalis, a chamber group he co-founded. He received his Doctor of Musical Arts degree from the State University of New York, Stony Brook. We're thrilled to have Dean Bronstein here today, and I look forward to his presentation. But before we begin today's discussion, I'd like to remind those of you tuning in live to submit your questions using the chat feature below. We'll be monitoring the conversation, and we'll do our very best to respond to as many questions as we can during the Q&A at the end of our broadcast. So without further ado, I'm thrilled to turn it over to Dean Bronstein.
Thank you, Sarah, and thanks for joining me today. Sarah has been with Peabody with me since the start of my tenure, actually, so has been part of this journey that we're going to share with you today. And I want to begin by just talking a little bit about sort of what has gone on at Peabody and what will happen going forward. We launched the Breakthrough Plan in 2015 and then reinvigorated that plan in 2019. And as part of that plan, we experienced really substantial enrollment growth, quite dramatic growth actually, through new and the expansion of existing programs. And that also, of course, has driven parallel growth in net revenues for the school as well. As the enrollment has grown, the diversity of our community has grown as well. We've had the number of underrepresented faculty grow from 10 just 7 years ago to now 30. The number of underrepresented students from 50 to nearly 150. And this is especially important in the classical arts, where underrepresented populations have historically largely been absent. We've also experienced truly generational change in our conservatory faculty as faculty retired and as we hired new faculty. We've reimagined our faculty governance, implementing a system of rank and promotion across the institute. And the addition of new programs, specifically our dance, Bachelor of Fine Arts, has added really a whole new dimension to the conservatory. Has had the expansion of technology-based programs, which are, of course, an excellent pathway to careers today. There is just huge demand for musical content in so many visual mediums and platforms. So in addition to our undergraduate Music for New Media program that was launched 7 years ago, we've added just very recently a graduate film and game scoring degree and expanded our computer music program. And the net result of all of this has been, since 2017, our tech-based disciplines, in 2017, our tech-based disciplines included about 8% of our students. And today, those degree programs represent more than 20% of our students, going from about 50 students to 150 students that are participating in our music engineering and technology programs. Our performing arts and health is really, for me, a really exciting and emerging footprint for Peabody and our colleagues over in medicine. If you think about this kind of work, what better place to do this than at a place like Johns Hopkins and Peabody? And there's, of course, you can see on the screen there was a wonderful New York Times article which highlighted Peabody's sound round programs at the hospital, in which Peabody-trained performers visit and play for patients and staff and others, and it's a great program. Peabody has also, with the opening, of course, of the Hopkins Bloomberg Center in Washington, D.C., Peabody has been a big, significant part of that building in bringing folks into that building. We've established a series of more than 20 concerts annually, as well as symposiums. And it's allowing us not only to help activate the building, but of course, it's allowed us to establish a base in Washington and a new audience. And I will also say that, parenthetically, while it's not going to be the Kennedy Center, there is an opportunity given what has recently happened at the Kennedy Center. And we're really looking for our presence at Hopkins Bloomberg Center to be a place where we can really convene national conversations about the arts. Along with the Breakthrough Curriculum, Launchpad is our innovative life design initiative. And we were talking just a moment ago about Washington. We recently, and this is a good example of really, wanting to help lead national conversations, had a great panel symposium on AI and the creative arts there. Of course, like the rest of the university, philanthropy is so important to what we do. And Peabody has had a long and dedicated, but a relatively small pool of donors. And we've been doing a lot of work to grow that pool of donors. And there's a lot of progress been made, but there's also a lot left to do as well. Part of our plan over the last, now nearly 10 years has been to really stabilize and strengthen the school financially as we were adding these programs and building the academic profile of the school. And following really a long history of structural deficits, we have worked through the development of the new programs and new revenues to strengthen the financial of the operating position of the school. And we've made a lot of progress, but also we recognize the need. We want to continue that progress. We want to build healthy margins and reserves, for the school in a way that we've not had historically. And I will say this is a significant task for this kind of a school, because when you look at our peers that are university-based music schools, they don't generally run surpluses or have balanced budgets, whereas we are really developing a model where we do and are able to do that. So, that brings us to what is really a transformational moment for Peabody at this time, with the incredible infusion of financial aid and meeting full need without loans for qualified undergraduates, as well as what we're doing now in our doctoral program, providing full tuition for the doctoral residency, along with a major capital investment that we are about to make in our facilities here, and I'll say more about that a little bit later. The uniformly positive peer reviews we've received in the last year, and just our position with the university. This is a really unique moment for the school, and I will sort of talk through some of these specific initiatives. Talking about financial aid, what you see here is a graph that shows some of the progress we've made and how we measure this. So it's been really good in the first year of this program to see the needle move significantly on key metrics around selectivity and yield. Selectivity is, of course, the admit rate. What percentage of your applicants do you admit to the school? And the yield is, of those that you admit, what percentage accept that, that offer of admissions. So in this, first year, we've seen that, admit rate get considerably more competitive. We've seen that yield rate go up considerably. Also, I should add that our Pell eligible and our first generation students percentages have grown significantly as well. And all of this has been driven by our discount rate, which is the percentage of scholarship we give, which was in 2015, maybe about 35% to over 70% today, which has taken us from the lower end of our peer set now to really the top end of our peer set. And we can see it reflected in the increased demand through applications. This year, for this coming year, we had an 18% increase in applications to Peabody. So as we look towards this next plan, there are really 5 key buckets here that we'll talk through in terms of what we are focusing on and what our key objectives are. So the first, I call bucket of academic programming, obviously critical. It's about what we do. While we have certainly launched important new programs that I was talking about earlier, especially the technology-based disciplines, our core programs, are central and have to continue to meet the highest standards. And how do we do that? We have 5-year external departmental reviews for all of our departments as a regular feature, as well as other ongoing internal reviews. We focus on the recruitment and retention of great faculty, as they are really the key point of how we attract students to Peabody. This is a conservatory, and so students come to study with a particular teacher. So now with the financial aid that we have in place and really the ability to remove a lot of the financial barriers, there is really, it's the job of the faculty and accountability for that faculty to really bring in the top talent, and they do. So joining now a strong suite of tech-based programs, which have included computer music and recording arts, and as I mentioned earlier, music for new media, comes the next logical step, and Sarah mentioned it in the introduction, hip hop. And, the way to think about this in a way is that if you consider that 50 years ago, jazz degree programs were few and far between. And now, almost every major music school and conservatory has a jazz program. And eventually hip hop will enter the academy. This is a really important art form of our time. And it's we're proud to say that we are there first with this program, the first hip hop degree in higher education. And also this ties to what I would call a growing footprint and focus for Peabody on American music. We are America's first conservatory, and that comes together in our world-class composition program, in our technology-based programs, a flourishing jazz program, a new initiative we have going in gospel, and now, of course, the launch of the degree program in hip hop. We're also keenly interested in, you saw earlier the symposium that we had done on AI. We're really keenly interested in the AI space, as you can imagine, and its impact and uses in the creative performing arts. We are having many discussions internally now about how do we wrap AI into our music engineering and technology programs, as well as our composition studies in the future. And of course, we're talking and engaging with our Homewood faculty colleagues who are doing important work in AI. The university, of course, has a major initiative and investment that is being made in AI. So this is a really important thing, we think, for the future, and how to harness this and how it's going to impact the performing arts becomes really a critical question. So, as we think about our academic programming, our terminal degree is the Doctor of Musical Arts. And so as we've moved forward with now the full tuition waiver for our DMA program, which is going to take an already very competitive program and make it even more competitive. Other, methods of strengthening what we do in the doctoral program are, enhanced teaching opportunities and more flexibility in specialization. So, for example, the ability of a DMA student to come here and be a performer, an active performer, but also to be focusing on performance health as part of our arts and health initiative. So, again, when we're talking about academic programming, student success is really an important initiative, not just in Peabody, but across the undergraduate populations of the university. And Peabody has developed a really robust plan for student success in collaboration with our colleagues at the university. And there are some unique challenges in a school like Peabody, which is a professional school. So if you think about, we're admitting at the undergraduate level 18-year-olds as freshmen. And lots of things can happen, whether it's injury or maybe realization that it's not the right path, or it's not what they thought it was, or it's more than they bargained for, whatever it might be. It happens in a professional school like this, at an early age. And so that's why you see, for us and our peers, you see graduation rates that tend to hover around, 80% or so. But our goal is to really develop a graduation rate that comes closer to what the Homewood graduation rate, which would put us at the top end of our peer set, which would be over 90%, and that's what we're working towards. And we've seen some initial success with our first to second year graduation, first to second year retention rates, as being 94% and 92% in the last 2 years. When we talk about graduation rates, we're talking about the percentage of students that graduate within a 6-year period. And it's an important measurement for how successful a program is being. So again, here too, the continued expansion of the Performing Arts and Health Department and the development of a real research enterprise for Peabody through this program, the development of academic programs around arts and health. This is all part of the picture as we move forward. And again, really positioning Peabody and Johns Hopkins Medicine as being leaders in this kind of work. And this is the effort that Sarah is leading. So also really important for us is the broadening of creative voices in our school today. As we diversify our community and seek to diversify the field, we really have to think about what's being studied and performed. And this also ties back to the American music concept as well. So we are thinking increasingly and acting on how do we present the broadest kind of, how do we expose our students to the broadest repertoire possible in different genres. And of course, you see that most recently manifested in the hip hop program. So as we think about our everything that we're doing at Peabody, we of course also think about our relationship, particularly at the undergraduate level, with our Homewood undergraduate populations. And today we have at Peabody around 50 double degree students. And that is literally students that are doing 2 degrees. They're doing a degree in Peabody and they're doing a degree in Homewood. It's quite a program and quite an accomplishment to be able to do it. We also have students that take classes at Homewood that may not be both double degree. And we have a program called Peabody at Homewood that serves several hundred Homewood students where we have Peabody faculty that are teaching up at Homewood. But I will also say that because in a highly decentralized university as Hopkins is, we're constantly working to break down the barriers, between the divisions, and we get increasingly students that want a broader experience and more exposure. And so we're doing a lot of work in this next version of our plan to make sure that we can build some consistencies in our student experiences across Homewood and Peabody, and again, to continue to break down any barriers so that we can make sure that students at Peabody can access Homewood and our Homewood students can access Peabody as well. So then we move to the second, what I would call bucket of initiatives in this building on the breakthrough plan. And that's financial aid. And of course, that's an important part of how we're now attracting our students and building excellence and quality and accessibility and all the things that financial aid does and why it's so important. We have some very aggressive targets here for Peabody with this major investment that we've made. And we are essentially what we're looking to do is to take what has historically been our acceptance rate and our yield rates and really invert those, so that within the next couple of years, our acceptance rate will be somewhere around 20% and our yield will be closer to 50%, 45 to 50%. And that is, that says a lot about the competitiveness and quality of the school, of course. So with the very significant investment in undergraduate financial aid that has been made in the last 2 years, and now the very significant investment that we're making in the doctoral program, it also calls the question of, we have a lot of master's level students. And there too, the discount rate has increased, the investments we've made significantly to over 50% today. But I would also say, unlike Homewood, Merit Aid plays a very big role in recruiting top talent to Peabody. And the challenge in a school, and this again sets us apart in a way, in a school like Peabody, is that graduate students and undergraduates really work side by side. In studios, in ensembles, they may play in the orchestra together. Not may, they will. They'll be in the same studio with a particular applied teacher. They'll share classes. So we want to make sure that we can close that funding gap between how we support our master's students and how we support both our undergraduates and our doctoral students. And that's something that we're working towards, certainly in this plan as well. So, and this is where also, when we talk about access and we talk about diversifying our field, which is so important, we have to talk about early training and we have to talk about early access to the arts. This is one of those fields where it's, there's almost no possibility for a career for late starters. And when I say late starters, I mean people begin to study music and instruments, of course, in elementary school and earlier than that. And so when we think about diversifying our community and people that are coming to Peabody and ultimately the field, that has to happen on the front end. And so that's why making additional investments in our preparatory, particularly in a program like our Tuned In program, which is a great example of that. Today is a program that has about 150 students in it that are from elementary school up through high school that get free lessons and free classes at Peabody. They come from Baltimore. And we've had students come through that program and go into Peabody and go into other major music schools. So this is really important. This is really important work, and continuing to develop this is really important. So I would also say that as we remove financial barriers, and as we enroll more first generation students, for example, and Pell eligible students, we need to make sure we're making more investments in support services. Because not everybody who has the talent and gets into a program like Peabody has had access, to some of the resources that some students have had. And so making sure that we can appropriately support those students is really critical once they get here. So then the next area that we're thinking about is what we call expanding our reach, or what happens beyond the Peabody campus, both and beyond the conservatory itself. And so, I think that first of all, I would say that, I've been really pleased to see Peabody come up further on the university radar over the last 10 years. We want to do even more. I think the Hopkins Bloomberg Center programming is a great recent example of that. And as we think about the future, there'll be opportunities that arise through the University Arts Initiative that is ongoing right now. So we look forward to continuing to develop our presence across the university community, of course. But I'd also say that, an important part of our breakthrough curriculum is how we think about training students for community work and community engagement. And many of our students today are doing a lot of community engagement, and that's from playing jazz performances around Baltimore, to being artists in residence in five or six retirement communities around Baltimore in the area, to performances in shelters and regular performances at Penn Station. It's a long list. But now what we want to do is build on the breakthrough curriculum and create more, I would say, intentionality in the community engagement space and the chance for experiential learning as part of this curriculum. And coming back to the preparatory, as we have done with the conservatory, are really thinking about how we expand our vision for the preparatory. And that really includes the creation of, I would say, eclectic new programs that broaden, much as we're broadening the program in the conservatory, broadening that program in the preparatory. And also developing new markets, especially in the area of lifelong learning. We know that there's a big opportunity there, and we will focus a lot on that going forward. So the other thing that is important for us to think about is today about little over 40% of our students are international, and mostly, not all, but mostly from Asian countries, China, Korea, Taiwan. And as we continue to assess the landscape in our international populations, especially as it pertains to coming to the United States, we want to explore how we might also deliver, a Peabody education through more hybrid experiences, combination of online and on campus, and even the idea of a satellite campus at some point. We have somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 alumni that we're aware of around the world or in touch with at any given time. And that is really an important relationship. And I would say that we all want to see more intentionality in the connection we make with our alumni, especially as it pertains to how we can connect alumni back to our current students as they work towards their career paths. We think, we know that there are great Peabody networks of alumni out there, and we want to connect those networks back closer with our current students, which I think could be enormously beneficial for those students. So as we move to the next area of focus, people and culture, well, of course, we're all about people. That's what makes this place hum, of course. And I would say for our students particularly, Peabody has a really unique culture. It blends a natural competitiveness of this field, and make no mistake about it, this is performing arts is an incredibly competitive field, but with learning in a supportive environment. And I think that's one of the things that makes Peabody really unique. And we want to build on that, while at the same time teaching and building in our students flexibility and resilience, of course. And then, of course, as we think about how we continue to build a diverse student cohort, despite the recent Supreme Court decisions around eliminating race-based admissions, and we are working, of course, within those parameters, we remain absolutely fully committed to continuing diversifying our student community. It's essential and it's existential, actually, for the future of the performing arts when we think about changing demographics. And I will say this past year, our entering class was 25% underrepresented students, and that was an increase from 18% in the prior year. So we're really happy to see that continued. We're continuing to build that diversity in our community without, again, following strictly within what the Supreme Court, of course, has outlined around admissions. And we are similarly committed with faculty. And like I would say other divisions at Hopkins, we are really working to improve compensation. We want to attract and retain top faculty as we have been doing. And one of the things that we've raised funds for is institutional funds that we're now matching to support faculty recruitment and retention. And that is really important for us to have, in our toolkit of resources to really make sure, as I said earlier in this, nothing is more central to the success of this school than our faculty, because that's who our students come for. And staff, similarly, the staff make this place run, and we need to make sure that we're thinking the same way about that. So this brings us to our last sort of big area of focus. And I would say that, this is the area that is newest to what we're really focusing on. And I'll just sort of start this part of the conversation by saying that there were so many other things that we wanted and needed to do over the last 10 years around expansion of programs, around rethinking our curriculum, around expanding the diversity of our community, all the things that financial sustainability, all the things that I've been talking about, that we needed to, in a sense, really wait on the facility question. But now, with all of the enrollment growth in the last 8 years, and with those of you that know this campus know that this is it is a wonderful campus, but it's also an older campus and an aging campus. And we've had, frankly, underinvestment in our facility over many decades. And that eventually risks undercutting all the progress the school has made over this last decade, particularly across virtually all aspects. And so for that reason, I'm really thrilled that we're able now to be taking on this major initiative, this major capital initiative, that we are starting this journey we're starting on now. And it began with the purchase of the Waterloo Apartments, which is just adjacent to Peabody's main campus, right across the street, literally. And as you can see from this diagram here, we have virtually doubled with the acquisition of Waterloo the size of the campus footprint, which also is allowing us to very substantially increase our housing capacity, the quality of the housing, and in an economically viable way. Students will be moving into the Waterloo beginning in fall of 2026. This is a major change. What this has done, of course, is that it frees us up to take the current on-campus housing towers, which, as you know, or if you'll remember, if you're an alumni or if you've been to campus, is 2 towers on our campus that is our current housing, and also our dining and other office space and things like that. And it's going to allow us to take that and completely reimagine the interior of that building, completely renovate, repurpose, really for expanded program space, which we need. And this is going to add somewhere in the vicinity of 30,000 plus square feet in state-of-the-art spaces. And it's, at this very moment, actually, we've solicited proposals for design firms. We're about to make a selection of a design firm, and we expect that work to begin on design, programming the building and design really within the next few weeks, actually. And that work will take somewhere of the order of 18 to 20 months, and then we'll be ready to actually start construction on the renovation of this building. It is enormously exciting, and it will change the campus. There are also other things going on across the rest of the campus in terms of addressing deferred maintenance and long-standing issues that we needed to address. And that's everything from redoing our restrooms, which I can't tell you how grateful people are for that, to making elevator repairs so our elevators don't break down, to replacing, all of the systems, our lighting and our technical systems in Friedberg Hall, in our main concert hall, which is a wonderful hall, but also is really badly in need of these improvements. And that is all going on right now. We'll continue on through the middle of next academic year. At the same time with all of this, we're mindful that we can't solve all of our space challenges with new space. So we have to be smarter about how we use space. So that one of the things we undertook over the last 6 months, after a lot of socializing and discussion, was a really complete remapping of how we schedule teaching in studio spaces. And just to sort of, bring it to life, a good example of this is we could have a full-time applied instrumental professor who may have a studio of 15 students, typical studio, and teach a couple of days a week, maybe 2.5 days. And so now that professor will share that space with another faculty member. And this just allows us to increase our practice space for our students and to really just be able to better utilize our space, which is an important part of this, as well as building, of course, and rehabbing existing space. So one of the things that we are really big on here at Peabody is how do we measure all of these things? How do we measure success? And in order to do that, it's really important for us to be thinking about and clear about who our peers are. We are, on anybody's given list, we are in the top 10 to 12 to 15 schools of, the performing arts around music, particularly in music and dance in the United States today. And so, we've identified a set of peers that are comprised of both university-based schools of music, such as we are, or conservatories, as well as what we call the independent schools and conservatories. And, our peer set is a nice mix of both of them. And so that is really what we're comparing ourselves to in that list. And the kinds of things that we are looking at and will look at is around admissions and everything from selectivity and yield, student achievement and success. What do those graduation rates look like? Faculty, the profile of our faculty, the performances of our faculty, are we recruiting the top faculty and keeping the top faculty? Curriculum, are we following curriculum, or are we really, really sort of paving the way in curriculum, as we have been doing? Facilities, how do our facilities compare? Well, frankly, up until now, our facilities have been lacking in comparison to some of our peer set, even though we may exceed in many other areas. And so we're going to rectify that now. And then, of course, around financial sustainability and resources. So really clear measurement for how we want to make sure we're assessing our progress, as we've been doing over the last 10 years, going forward with of course, this new plan. So that is really sort of the tour through everything that is happening. And with that, I think we can, if we have it, we can take some questions, and I look forward to hearing what people's thoughts are, and hoping we've got a few alumni out there, and it is welcome, and look forward to hearing from folks.
Thank you so much, Fred. That was all so interesting and tells such a powerful story about how much the growth has happened. And of course, I've had the opportunity to work alongside you as that growth has all happened. And it's interesting to see that folks have asked some really good questions that get to the heart of some of the things that have been most important to you and to the team at Peabody. So the first question was from Cindy, and it's about preparing students for 21st century careers in the arts, right? So we're all aware of the fact that the arts landscape has changed quite a bit and has been impacted by COVID, and now by lots of dynamics happening within economically and also politically. This all, before all this happened, there were still challenges for job prospects and careers for artists. Yep. So the question is around what kinds of skills do artists really need to meet the challenges and take advantage of the opportunities of this 21st century? And what do those include like business skills and entrepreneurship skills?
Yeah, look, I think that's a great question, right? And certainly it goes to the heart of our breakthrough curriculum, and the way we're trying to, expose our students to these issues. And I would say a couple of things. First of all, I begin with saying none of what we're adding to this is a substitute for building your core skills, obviously, as an artist. There's no fast track or no shortcut to becoming a great violin player or pianist or singer. We all know that. The core work has to go on, it has to continue. It is more important than ever because the competition, keeps getting stiffer, I would say. So I start with that as sort of but what you have to build, I think, around that is a whole set of skills and, everything from how do you think about, how do you become your own sort of audience driver? How do you develop an audience? If you're going to build a chamber music ensemble and you want to start a business as a chamber music ensemble, as I did when I was very early in my career with some colleagues, how do you do that? What kinds of things do you need to think about? How do you find an audience for that? How do you program for that audience? It will be probably very different from what you did when you studied here at the school in terms of how you think about your degree programs and things like that. That's a skill. Digital skills. One of the great things about technology is that it's eliminated the middleman, middle woman, middle man, middle person. It is what you have is, you can do your own video. You can do your own recording. You can publish your own blog. I mean, there are so many things that people can do. And so how you do that and the skills to do that, I think, is really important. So, I mean, these are just a couple of examples, having a digital portfolio. How do you pitch an idea? One of our breakthrough curriculum courses focuses on pitching your creative idea. I teach an arts leadership class and students do a capstone project. And what do? They have to develop an organization from scratch. That they have in their head, and they have to have all the components of that organization. They need to be able to explain how the organization is structured, how the organization works, who the organization's audience is, how it's funded, all those kinds of things, because I want our students to think about, how they can build their own career. You have real agency as an artist, but you only have agency if you think about how to be flexible and adaptable. If you think about, my only thing I can do is come out of music school, let's say I'm an instrumentalist, and take an audition and play in an orchestra. That's my only thing I can do. You're limited. Now, that's coming from somebody who loves orchestras. I spent over 20 years of my career, running large orchestras. I love orchestras, but I also know that is a very challenging landscape. Not everybody will be successful with that. And not everybody is happy doing it, by the way, as well. And so the more flexibility and adaptability, and the more our students and our graduates can think about how you expand, right? How you think about the work you're doing, Sarah, and training artists to be able to work in healthcare situations. Another great example of that. I think there's so many things that can happen in terms of our students that we that don't in any way say, hey, I want to play in an orchestra. It's not saying you can't do that. It's simply saying there are many avenues to a career today, but you have to think about it, I think, a little bit differently, and that's what's really exciting about it, I think. A long answer, I guess, but there is a lot, I think, to think about with regard to it, and it's a great question.
So the next topic area is around Peabody in the city of Baltimore. So this was actually brought up by both Daniel and Talia. How can Peabody, the question around how has Peabody engaged with and contributed to the Baltimore community, and how could it be more a pillar of the Baltimore community? And I love the way Daniel phrased this. It seems like music could be a uniquely effective tool to connect the university to the people of the city. So what are your thoughts about that?
So look, here also, I think that I would say a couple of things about this. I think there is a tremendous amount going on with Peabody in the community today. Why do I say that? I say it because, first of all, we have students that are out playing in their own ensembles and doing stuff in the community all the time. We have our jazz, program that has partnerships with Keystone Corner, and our jazz players are playing in clubs all around the city. We have in your program the students that are artists in residence in senior communities. We have performances that are going on, student performances that are going on in shelters, that are going on in social service agencies, and collaboration with social service agencies. We have, the new work that we're doing around gospel with Darren Atwater. We have of course, the launch of the new hip hop program and the connection that's being made with the community there through that work. Baltimore has been a very important center for hip hop, and so there's yet another connection. I think there are so many things actually that are going on. The preparatory is really, interacts with the community all the time in a wide swath of the community. I think we have to do actually a better job of sort of how do we tell that story actually about everything that Peabody actually is doing in the community. But I think it is, and I come back to that is very much in the founding sort of ideals of Peabody. Peabody was founded not as a conservatory or as a preparatory, it was founded as a cultural center for the city of Baltimore, which is why there was a library and an art gallery and a speaker series and music, a concert series. That's why all those things happened. And that was George Peabody's vision actually for this. So I think in some sense, we've come back to that vision, I think maybe for a long time earlier in the 20th century and through much of the 20th century, maybe we weren't quite connected in the way that we could have and should have been. But I think, certainly over the last, couple of decades, and certainly over the last decade, we are thinking much more intentionally about that. I think that, it's really important. I mean, Peabody is obviously a world-renowned institution. It's really important. But the same way it's really important that the university connects with the community, it's really important that Peabody does the same. And I think we're doing it. And I think we have to do maybe a better job of how we weave all of that together.
Yeah, and I just would love to chime in here.
Yeah.
That right now across the university, for those of you who don't know, there's an arts task force that's looking at all the different ways the arts are part of the Hopkins culture, experience, contribution to the community in which we live. And I completely second what you're saying, Fred, around even some folks at the university don't have as clear an understanding of the extent of Peabody's commitment to and engagement with multiple different members of the communities in Baltimore. So I agree. I think we can tell that story even better. And that will only grow as more community engagement, our students get more involved in community engagement. So thank you for that. The third question is around the platform of the Hopkins Bloomberg Center in DC. That I think you've said that you really hope that national conversations about the arts will take place in that location. What are some of your thoughts about what those national conversations could be or should be?
Yeah. So look, I think it's any number of things. It's everything from what are the challenges of the arts nationally in this country, in terms of how they're funded, in terms of, audiences, the importance of the arts, to what is the impact of AI, on the arts, to, things that are more focused. I could easily imagine, for example, a focus because we're so involved with American music and different genres now. Is there a place there to do something substantial around American music, in the nation's capital, given the focus of Peabody and all the work that we're doing in those areas. So I actually think there are a lot, arts and health, I think, in terms of that whole conversation. I think that there is obviously this is a really challenging time in our nation's capital. And, we don't need to go into that other than to say that, we're all navigating that. But I think that there's an opportunity in all of that too. and with the Bloomberg Center, and no shortage, I think, of subject matter that is appropriate for a national conversation. And I think we've done this. We did a lot of this, or quite a lot of this. We Peabody led and organized consortiums beginning with COVID, actually, around arts, with arts organizations across, literally across the country, where hundreds of people would participate in these conversations. So, and that was, of course, virtual. But I think there's a real role to play in Washington with the Hopkins Bloomberg Center now, and is a great place to be thinking about doing some of these things.
Thank you so much. We need to think about our time frame here. I think we've got quite a few wonderful questions here, so I think we have time for about 2 more. So Carl asked such an interesting question. I'd be interested to hear how you might answer this one. What kinds of questions do you wish that prospective students would ask to get to the heart of what it means to be part of the Peabody community?
Oh, well, I guess what I would say is I would want to frame it somewhere around something that I believe, and I'll tell you the way I think about this. And I say this and I'll get to the question, but I'll say this. I say this to parents and I say it to students. I'm really honest about this. I say, unless you want to do this, pursue a career in the arts more than anything else in the world, don't. Do something else, because it's really hard. The second part of that statement is, if you want to do this more than anything else in the world, you can't do anything else. This is what you have to do. And I think what I wish students would ask is, how, what is this really like? Because I think for me that statement answers that question. It is a calling, it's a passion, and you have to be willing to fight through a lot of things, and I'm really honest about saying that to students and parents. But if you're willing to do that, it's a fantastic career. And I look at something like somebody like myself also, that I was able to, I did certain things early in my career, and then I did something different, I did something else, partly because I was open to the flexibility of how, of thinking about that, and interested in sort of the wider range of questions. And I think that it is, I think passion has so much to do with this, and you have to really want it.
Yes, you do. We have a question from Marcia, and this is a great question. How can alumni become involved with what's going on at Peabody these days?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I will tell you, first of all, I love when I go out and I visit places and I meet alumni. I'm going to actually be in Korea in a couple of weeks and meet with we've got a really active alumni group in Korea. And I love meeting alumni. I think we have to do a better job, actually. And I alluded to this in our plan of connecting with our alumni. It's not that we do connect with them, but I think, alumni, for example, are teachers, and they are sending, of course, their students to Peabody all the time. Of course, that's the case. But, I would say, I think I alluded to, I would love to see us find much more intentionality in how we connect our alumni today with our students today, because I think it could be enormously beneficial. First of all, I think when we hear from alumni, we do hear a lot of interest in wanting to engage with students, actually, and what's going on in the school today. And I think there's no better way to do that, actually, than with our students. And I think for our students, that is just a tremendous opportunity to already begin to build a network, right, before you even leave school, from the time you get here, to also actually, learning from our alumni, right? You learn from everybody. I mean, you learn from, when I was an undergraduate, I learned from graduate students. You learn from your teachers, of course. But I think our students could really benefit from, from connecting with our alumni, and learning about the field, and learning, avoid certain things that our alumni maybe learned as they were starting out. It's just really important. So when I think about sort of the one single thing, that's probably it.
And I'd love to just add, give a little shout out to our new director of alumni relations, Talia Titus, who I believe is on this call today. Talia just sent out a lovely newsletter, first newsletter of her time with us. I'm also an alum and I received it, and lots of good information in there. So some wonderful ways to connect, and we hope that you will. We're really excited about what's going on and would love to share more about it with you. I have sort of competing last questions for you, Fred, and
Okay.
I have to pick one. I think I'm going to ask this one. Of all these things that are happening, all this new growth, all this new investment, all this new strategic direction, and the excitement about new financial aid resources and a new campus, at the end of the day, what excites you the most about where Peabody is right now?
I think what excites me the most about it is that what I think is unique about this school right now is that we are the oldest conservatory in the United States, and it has this very deep, rich, long history. And all of that tradition, you know, is color for what the institution is, right? It is really important. We have all of this history, but what that allows us to do, actually, it gives us the foundation and the ability, I think, with that history to look to the future. And I think that's the thing that is, that I'd like to think in some ways sets us apart, that there is the combination of this tradition and the strength of the core study and all the work that that has gone on for hundreds of years that needs to go on, with the ability to think how the world is changing and how does that fit into the future world, and how do we ensure that we're training our students to be the next generation of leaders in this wonderful field. And so when I think about sort of what the essence of that right now, I mean, obviously excellence, all those things are there, that's a given, but I think the two things put together, tradition and innovation, it's not always easy to marry those two things. And I think we've been able to do that. And I think in a fairly seamless way. And I think it's really important. I think it's a lot about who we are, I think, today as a school. And so I guess that's what I would say to that.
Thank you so much for everything, all of the presentation and the questions. Thank you all for being here with us today. For more information about the Peabody Institute and the many, many wonderful things held in our halls throughout the year, please do visit peabody.jhu.edu. And again, we thank you so much for spending this hour with us and for your curiosity about Peabody. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.